सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः, भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः, स्थिरैरङ्गैः तुष्टुवागुंसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः। स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः, स्वस्ति न पूषा विश्ववेदाः, स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः, स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। हरिः ओम्। श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ओम्। Okay. So we completed the query 3 last time. We completed query 3. Essentially, what we discussed during query 3. Ramakanji, have some problem there?
No, leave the logo. You just put it.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Okay. All right. So, what we said, question 3 is all about how to overcome the limitations of Manomaya Kosha. Manomaya Kosha is the mind. First question was related to Annamaya Kosha, more related to as to how these bhutas are coming, etc., etc. The question is definitely with respect to the physical bodies, how they are getting generated, why they are getting there, from where they are getting generated, etc., etc. So Rishi has to take a very broad view when trying to discuss with somebody so low who thinks that Annamaya Kosha is real. Now to explain that Annamaya Kosha is nothing but a mithya, a elusive entity, very, very difficult for all of us actually to accept that. As to what is this mithya? When you take elusiveness, sometimes we may get to feel that it is not there. But actually mithya doesn't mean that it is not there. What it means is that its real nature is not what you think it is. That is what actually it's all talking about. So it's only name and form which has got utility. However, we think that there is a reality associated with that particular Annamaya Kosha or the physical body. So we have seen in the first question. Second question is more related to the Pranamaya Kosha, and at that stage, Pranamaya Kosha is very much linked to the Indriyas. So all the 10 Indriyas or 5 Jnana Indriyas especially, they were the ones who started the discussing as to who is the best, etc., etc. And then they said, ultimately they accepted that Prana is the Varishta. He is the best associated with that. So it's more in terms of Pranamaya Kosha, how one must overcome. So the reality associated with the senses, mind, etc. is supposed to be taken out, and we accept the real nature of that particular senses is nothing but the prana. Means the senses are there, they appear to be very conscious and sentient, but really speaking, senses are all inert by nature, and it is something else which is providing that consciousness or sentiency to these senses and providing the power also to that particular response. In the third question, we said it is more related to the Manomaya Kosha, the mind. If you really see as to how the mind functions, we have seen this in other texts when we were discussing. How many of you are aware of these two terms, Vritti Vyapti and Phala Vyapti? Have you ever heard of these two?
Yeah.
You heard that, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think I will briefly touch, because it is important to understand the working of the mind and the importance of prana with respect to the mind. how it actually works and what it means in terms of the workings of the mind and how prana plays that role. Because in the mind is the place where every one of us believe that we are alive. Really speaking, body also sometimes we may accept that that is not where the life is. Because if you see, when somebody gets a gangrene in one of the legs, for example, a person is ready to sacrifice the leg in order to live. Means the body is not the life that we are talking about. There is something else which is holding the principle of the life in this body. Although it's very difficult for us to distinguish between these two in terms of consciousness and the physical body or the inert body. But little bit investigation will tell you that these two are not the same. There is a consciousness or sentiency which is beyond, supporting all the body parts. So a person is ready to sacrifice if he can. Obviously, one cannot sacrifice the heart and continue to live. So if that is the case, then there is a problem. But those physical aspects which I can sacrifice but continue to live in my own definition, people are ready to do that. The fingers are amputated, the legs are amputated, etc., etc. Some people, even the kidney goes away, one kidney is sufficient, so they give it to somebody. So it is pretty clear that the life associated with the body is held somewhere else, and that somewhere else is normally accepted as the mind, because that is where the sentiency is pretty clear in terms of experience. Sentiency or the consciousness is experienced in the mind very clearly. So we say mind has got that particular consciousness. But our Shastras, what they talk about, if you try to define the mind per se, what is mind is nothing but a flow of thought. So the mind is very peculiar. We may think that I am multitasking. We may think that I can hold number of thoughts together, which we feel we can, because we do multitask. But the way the mind works, it can hold actually only one thought at a given time. Only thing is that the gap between these two thoughts is so short that we think that we are holding more than one thought, but mind at any given time can hold only one thought, is what the Shastras say. That is how the mind works. Yeah. Experientially, it may not be correct, but Shastras say that only one thought makes up the mind, so to say. Now, what this Vritti Vyapti, Phala Vyapti tells us is normal experience for all of us is that the sentiency in the mind and sentiency in the thought, they are accepted normally as one and the same. Means a thought is sentient is my experience. Again, there Shastras say, no, it doesn't happen that way, that the thought is a conscious entity. Thought is inert. However, it borrows certain sentiency from the pure consciousness, or Sakshi Chaitanyam you can say, or Kutastha Chaitanyam you can say. They are two different things, but at this level, they appear to be one. These two terms, I'm sure you all heard. Kutastha Chaitanyam or Sakshi Chaitanyam is nothing but the individual consciousness, the pure consciousness. People say, in another way they put is Ishvara. He lives in you. And illumining all the activities within you is how our Shastras normally put that across. So this thought that we talk about, Shastras are telling, it has got two ways to look at. One is the sentiency at a individual level, or the Kutastha Chaitanyam, or normally at this stage we talk about only Sakshi Chaitanyam. Witnessing consciousness is a term I think we all heard many Swamijis talk about, witnessing consciousness. So when we say that thought is not sentient, thought is inert by itself, the way the mind works, Shastras say, is whenever there is an object coming in front of you or an object coming within you, whether it is a subtle internal object. What are internal objects? We look at the anger, emotions, all the kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya, all the 6 vikaras of the emotions that we get. Or even the joy we get, love that we express, positive ones. These are all emotions that a mind is feeling, and these are all objects within me, internal. And there are obviously objects outside. How do mind recognize them? What it says is that depending upon your vasana, depending upon your tendency, which is there, you pick up one object out of many outside at a given time. You may quickly select more than one, but one object at a time outside, one emotion within inside. You may feel very angry towards your child when he makes a mistake, but immediately there is a love associated which also comes through, which will decide your action in terms of how you deal with that particular situation. For example, yeah, one of the other internal objects, one of the other external objects. What the Shastras say is this happens through what we call is a process of thought. Thought actually goes out through your mind, envelops that particular object, or thought envelops the thought within you, the emotion within you, if that is the object that we are talking about. It envelops and it removes the natural ignorance that is there everywhere. Every object is covered by ignorance. Like we said, the Maya has got 2 powers, Avarana Shakti and Vikshepa Shakti. So this Avarana is there everywhere. That's why there may be 10 objects in front of me, but depending on my inclination, I select 1 or 2 to be recognized in my mind. All the other 8 also were brought in by the eyes into my mind, but I ignore them. So there is no phalavyapti. So the second aspect comes into picture. There is something called phalavyapti. This vritti vyapti does not necessarily mean that the knowledge has come into your mind. The knowledge requires the phala. Phala means the fruit. The fruit of that particular activity that you are doing is called phalavyapti. What Shastras say is this phalavyapti means, phala means the fruit, the knowledge of that object is now generated in my mind in the form of a thought. But now the knowledge of that object is there in my mind, and I recognize that there is a book in front of me on the table where I am seeing, for example, a black diary kind of a thing I am seeing. So I am actually have the knowledge of that black book now, but I may not have noticed other stuff in this one. That means the vritti vyapti has taken place, but phala vyapti has not taken place. Only when the phala vyapti is completed, the knowledge is completed in my mind. Shastras talk about this phala vyapti happens because of the sentiency, consciousness, which is nothing but knowledge that we talk about. Yeah, intelligence that we have. And that intelligence is called prana. So the life when we talk about is about gathering knowledge from outside in terms of the objects outside. And life is nothing but a journey of experiences. Like what Gurudev says, is nothing but one experience to the other experience. And every experience, you gain certain knowledge associated with the outside and inside worlds. Okay. Now, this sentiency again has got 2 states or 2 statuses we can talk about. Important that you understand these things. Then I will relate to the 3rd chapter. Yeah. 3rd question. When we talk about this phalavyapti and the sentiency that is there, I am sure you heard about Chidabhasa and Bhasa. Bhasa is the original consciousness, where Chidabhasa is nothing but a reflected consciousness is a term that normally used, but Abhasa in general is nothing but a shadow. Shadow is Abhasa, is nothing but a reflection that we are talking about. Whenever we talk about Abhasa, what we are looking at is, there is why we call it reflection, because Abhasa is more or less appears to be the original, but really speaking, there are certain aspects which are not there. For example, when you stand in front of a mirror, yeah, now there is a person who is looking at the reflection of the object inside. Now, is that particular reflection complete in terms of the object in front of it? If you say, actually, if you analyze it, it appears to be complete, but really speaking, what it can reflect is only the front side of me. The sides which are there, the back side which is there, unless you bring a second observer, the total reflection of the original is not possible. So abhasa, always there is a deficiency in terms of the original and the reflected entity. Similarly, when we say abhasa here in terms of chidabhasa, what it is telling is the vritti vyapti when it takes place. Wherever there is a vritti, the reflected consciousness will be part and parcel of that. You cannot experience a thought without chidabhasa. That's why to us experientially, every mind appears sentient. Every thought appears sentient because a thought cannot exist without chidabhasa. So there is a fraction of a time, whatever, second also is a big number for that, fraction of a nanosecond before the thought is created and a chidabhasa gets created on the thought. Wherever thought is there, chidabhasa gets created automatically. But technically, there are two different things is what the Shastras tell us. And when we say that phalavyapti is taking place, that phalavyapti or the knowledge aspect of that particular thought that is creating in our mind happens because of this chidabhasa, the reflected consciousness, so to say. Okay, so there is a consciousness, there is a chidabhasa, reflected consciousness, there is a thought. And when that thought goes out in terms of vritti vyapti, vyapti means enveloping. It envelops that particular object, it becomes vritti vyapti, and wherever vritti is thought, wherever vritti is there, chidabhasa automatically is there, and that is where the phala vyapti takes place. But these two are two different processes. They are not the same process, is how we talk about. Now, what is that original consciousness? Is nothing but Atman. The term that we use for that Sakshi Chaitanyam is nothing but the Atma. And the Chidabhasa that we talk about is nothing but the reflection of that particular Atman. Now you link to question 3 that we talked about. Okay. So when we talked about question 3, we said that when the question was asked as to where from this prana is born, prana jayate, where from this prana is born, Pippalada told the direct answer to the Sishya, and he said that this is born from Atman. Atma is the responsible for creation of the prana. Immediately he said, so that we don't get that idea that prana is something like a child born out of mother. No, it's not like that. It is more like a shadow born out of the man. Now you link that bhasa, chidabhasa, and the aspects that are associated with this prana. Now that will give you why the mind is not a real, eternal, sentient entity. Experientially, it appears to be continuously conscious, continuously sentient, continuously alive. But what Shastras are telling is, no, mind by itself is thought by itself is inert. It only helps you to overcome the general ignorance that is there in every object, but you do require a chidabhasa, a reflected entity of the Atman to overcome and gain knowledge of the objects inside and outside in this world. Now, if you try
Shankarji,
to...
when you have a thought about an object, you will not have a thought unless you have seen or heard about object, right?
Correct.
So,
So when
as
you
long
see-
as you don't have thought, so you don't have consciousness about that either.
Yeah, you are right. But remember to use, don't use consciousness, you use reflected consciousness.
Okay.
Consciousness is present everywhere.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
the reflected consciousness depends on the thought for its existence. Like a thought depends on reflected
Existence.
consciousness for its existence.
Okay.
In fact, in Panchadashi chapter 8, what we are learning, there is a huge discussion going on between a Purva Pakshi and the Guru, who is telling that, no, if they are not appearing together, if you say that both appear only together, then they should be one and the same. The Guru says that, okay, you are telling me that, but tell me, body and mind also appear to be one and the same. Because without body, mind doesn't function. Without mind, you don't know that body exists. Both will be together, you experience them together, but do you give the same status to both of them? Similarly, he says that Chidabhasa and the thought, they appear to be one and the same. But Shastra, if I go back to my Upanishad, there are many quotes from the Upanishad which says that consciousness is different, which provides this reflection into the thought, and that particular Chidabhasa is the one which makes me gain the knowledge from the outside and inside objects. This is a general trend, not only in Panchadashi, he quotes actually 5 different Upanishads where the same thing is quoted by different rishis. So this particular aspect that we talk about Phalavyapti and Vritti and then Phalavyapti is an important concept in the Shastras to distinguish the inner thought and the consciousness or sentiency which is outside, but it actually provides as a Jivatma only as a reflection. Now again, I introduce another term here without this one, Jivatma I said. So this is the Chidabhasa, which is actually talks about a Jivatma. So Jivatma is a very important concept, and that Jivatma is not the original consciousness or Sakshi Chaitanyam. Once you recognize these two, variation between the original pure consciousness and the Chidabhasa, and this Chidabhasa is nothing but prana, but as a shadow in your mind, which you currently think that it is nothing but the thought, and I am sentient because of that prana, the term that prana is used, that prana is nothing but a shadow of the Atma, is what the Rishi Pippalada told this. So it's very important aspect which we talk about in terms of the illusory nature of the mind. When we talk about illusory nature, what is that illusory nature? Is nothing but this difference between the Sakshi Chaitanyam and Chidabhasa, which actually provides you a Jivatma is there because of the Chidabhasa, whereas once you overcome that, you go to the Sakshi Chaitanyam or the individual consciousness, and we require to overcome that. Manoj, you had a question.
Ji, so I was just thinking, is it we can consider Chidabhasa as a origin or the source of thought?
Very difficult to say. What Shastras talk about is as long as a Jivatma gets created, the thought is a continuous process. So as per the Shastra that we talk about, the thought gets originated first, and Chidabhasa, because of the nature of the thought, which has got a reflecting medium, the Chidabhasa appears immediately on the thought. There is absolutely no time difference between these two, but they happen in that sequence. Thought comes first because it actually sees something. The senses bring that particular object into your mind. Mind brings the internal thoughts into your mind in a form of a thought. The moment thought forms, the Chidabhasa, because the consciousness is there everywhere. It is like a Mahakasha, that the space that is there everywhere, including all the pots that we talk about, the mind that we have. Everywhere, wherever the mind is there, the reflection automatically happens. But thought comes first, the Chidabhasa is not the source of the thought.
And
That happens through a different process.
yes, ShankarJi. And another point is mostly we referred anger, jealous as a vikara, and we are not considering joy and other good aspects of the vikara, but both has potential to cause vikshepa.
Correct. You are absolutely right there. That's why I did mention love. I did mention these aspects that are positive aspects which are there, the joy aspect which is there. But mainly the joy aspect is discussed a little bit in the next question when we talk about the Anandamaya Kosha. That's why it is called Anandamaya Kosha. When we talk about Anandamaya Kosha, we will discuss about the joy aspect, although joy is there even in the body. When somebody gives a good massage, joy we feel. But what they say is the joy is always felt in Anandamaya Kosha. But we will discuss this more when we reach that particular point.
Shankarji, we had talked about this before. If consciousness is all over, it's everywhere, how can it be reflected? I don't understand. That part really boggles my mind. I agree with when the thought comes, it comes from that. I don't know why. I can't understand why it has to be enveloped with a reflected part of something that exists everywhere.
Correct. Yeah. So when the definition of the pure consciousness is given in Shastras, Abhiniji, pure consciousness is told to be avikari. There is no changes to that particular pure consciousness. It is told to be all pervading, the way that you mentioned. And there is every aspect or definition that we give is only in negative terms, because you cannot define that pure consciousness. Ajam nirvikalpam nirakaram ekam niranandamanandam advaita rupam. So Advaita. Other than that, nothing is there, really speaking. So when you say that something is coming out of it, your question comes with this one, that nothing can come without that because it is everywhere. What we say is, yes, it does come through from that, in that sense, like a snake comes out of the rope. ShankarJi gives that famous example because of that. He says, yeah, it does come out of it, but don't give the same sense of reality to both of them. It is like a rope which comes out, and once the rope is there, there should be a reflection of this which is making it happen.
That's because of ignorance.
Ignorance, in fact, is part and parcel of this illusion. Maya is not part of Brahman. Advaita doesn't include Maya. But Maya remains as a eternal partner. So Shakti, in the form of power, it remains with Brahman. But really speaking, that pure consciousness does not have anything. That's why we talk about Advaita. So from Advaita Purnam, nothing else can come, including your thought, including Maya, nothing can come. But the moment Maya has come inside, that ignorance has come inside, all the other aspects are coming. But what Ishvara says, or the Brahman in terms of creation says, is that how can an inert thing that is coming out of illusion can create this? So I have to be within that particular creation. So that's where we talk about a Ishvara's Pravesha. Pravesha inside every one of us. So that particular Ishvara residing in your heart, Hriday Guha, is the one which illumines and makes all these things appear to come out of him or out of it, out of her. But really speaking, nothing comes out of it. That is all the subtle subject that we require to grasp. And when we talk about individual consciousness, nothing can come out of it because we are looking at the pure consciousness only, but it is as if it is enveloped within a jiva, which makes it jivatma. But again, what they say is that individual consciousness, it is like an example I'll give you. There is a sky, there is space, there are some clouds which are there. Now you have 4 different pots that are kept of different capacities. and you have obviously a pot space in each one of them. Now, this pot space appear to be different from the total space, but really speaking, they are not one and the same. Suppose you have different liquids in this particular 4 pots, and you have a reflection of this pot space along with the clouds that are there up in the water, or the liquid that is there held within this pot, for example. Then what is the status of that particular reflection in that particular water? We talk about Jiva, not Jiva is that pot space. We talk about Jiva as the reflection in that water, because water has got that nature to reflect that, it is reflected into that. And individually, I think that I am of this particular capacity, which is getting reflected into that particular water that we talk about. Think about it. These are subtle aspects which we require to grasp. Manjuji, you had a question.
Shankarji, I have a question. So if I have a thought and I don't reflect on it, and that has no consciousness then at all, because I got a thought, but I didn't let it reflect.
It doesn't matter, because these things happen at a very, very fast pace.
Okay.
All that we are talking about is, you may have seen, for example, I'm just roaming my eyes around, and I see a red pen which is lying there. I may not think about it, but that already got registered in my mind. Okay. And that becomes a thought where the phalavyapti has taken place. Because if I'm asked later, I am able to recollect there is a pen on the table, but I have not given any further thought to that. But the thought has come, phalavyapti has already taken place, because I registered the red pen in my mind.
So should we be very unconscious of a lot of these things and ignore them, or like
not necessary? Not necessary. These are not driven by you. Okay. These are driven by the subtle aspects of tendencies, which we call as subtle tendencies inside your mind, vasanas. They are the ones which actually drive normally into what you select. If you are able to select consciously, that is where the journey will start for you to be more prudent, more viveka. If you don't do that, you just live like an animal.
Right.
Right now, I feel like going and drinking, I go and drink. If I feel like doing something, I'll go and do. If I feel like eating, I will go and eat. But the moment you say that, no, I don't want to live like that, I am now trying to see that my thought has come, but I want to dwell on that as to what is good for me. Viveka is always what is good for me. Then moment you say what is good for me, your journey towards the Ishvara has started with that particular step.
I think, just dwelling on Manjuji's example and your example about a pen on a table, it's fine. And I think it's no problem just to register that there is a pen on the table. But if I don't develop a desire that I need to possess that pen, or that pen is really important to me, it's fine. Once I start having that raga dvesha, then insistence on having that pen or rejection of anything. And the other thing I wanted to point out, it's not only an object that's perceived by the eye. Most of the thinking happens without objects, do I like this person? Do I not like it? Do I like what they are doing? Or am I irritated by certain things? Those are not some things that are perceived by the eye or anything like that. So I think if we make a distinction, or we can somehow stop, pause ourselves and reflect, why am I thinking that way? And then we are on the journey. But otherwise, we will see pens or whatever else, but I don't think it makes anything bad happen in that way.
Yeah, if you're not distracted, you're okay.
Yeah. I agree with you, Tanuji. only aspects where I will say is when we talk about seeing, it's only an example.
Yes,
We can extend
correct.
it to all the 5 senses that are there. And I did mention that their objects can be internal as well as external. All
Indeed.
of them are actually covered with this ignorance, which we call as Maya. And every aspect requires a Vritti Vyapti first, and then a Phala Vyapti. What I'm telling is Vritti Vyapti can take place with many. However, Phala Vyapti happens only when the reflected consciousness illumines that particular object. And that normally is based on your Vasana, but you can train your mind to pick up what is good for you.
Mhm.
That's what I meant.
Yes, right. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, good. So, as I mentioned again last time, one important aspect I mentioned, till your Manomaya Kosha, whether it is the body, Prana, Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, in yogic terms, these are called the dark regions. Why dark regions? Because the aspect of this Chidabhasa is so prevalent that it is very, very difficult for you to even look at a observer or a Sakshi Chaitanyam, which is actually providing this Chidabhasa. If you really see, they are dark because thought, I cannot experientially distinguish between a consciousness and a thought. As I may said, like scientists believe that sentiency, and not only scientists, even Charuvakas and others, Nyaya philosophy, for example, our own philosophies, they do believe that no, this particular aspect that you are talking, you want to unnecessarily distinguish between Chidabhasa and all is not correct. Consciousness inside is nothing but a product of the mind. That is how normally we, there are many philosophies which accept only that. Because my mind has got that capacity to produce consciousness, you may say, okay, when a thought comes, automatically mind is generating a consciousness associated with this. That is how many people say there is no need for any Chidabhasa. But what Vedanta says, what Advaita Vedanta specifically talks about, what Shankaracharya, what we are learning talks about is, there is a difference between, like what you said, Tanuji, Raga Dvesha you mentioned. Another very important aspect which is there is Sukha Dukkha. When you bring in that joy aspect into this, Sukha Dukkha. Now, if you say that this Sukha Dukkha belongs to the Jiva, and Jiva doesn't require any Chidabhasa, it is the original consciousness, individual entity getting generated within your mind, or consciousness is there everywhere, let us say. In your mind also it is there. You don't require a Chidabhasa for that. Because bhasa is good enough to produce everything. But the problem comes is when a Sukha Dukkha, Raga Dvesha, which are part and parcel of our life as a Jiva, how do we explain when you compare to the definitions of that original consciousness given in the Shastras? That is where we say, Shankaracharya comes and says, Chidabhasa is a requirement for you to say and analyze a Jiva with respect to Sukha Dukkha and Raga Dvesha. Very important words Tanuji has mentioned. But
So,
this is part and parcel of that.
So Shankarji, I mean, I'm just trying to understand this, and I'd like your correction if I'm not understanding it correctly. So when we say Sakshi Chaitanyam, one step down is Chidabhasa. Yeah, one step down, which is at individual, it's Jivatma, Prana, whatever. Because we are saying that Sakshi Chaitanyam has, basically no properties. Yeah, it's without any properties. Or you can say it's Anand, which again makes a bit of a conflict in my mind.
Yeah.
So when you do the step down to Chidabhasa, then it gives you a way of putting the Raga Dvesha or Sukha Dukkha, because it's one step lower.
Correct.
So I think that it's this middle layer that is put in to make this possible, because we all experience Sukha and Dukkha or Raga Dvesha. Is that
Correct.
accurate or not?
Very accurate, because the definition of Jivatma, if you see, normally is defined in these terms. A Jivatma always has Sukha Dukkha. It has this Raga Dvesha, and they come through the vasanas that we talk about. And that is what actually puts you into this cycle of samsara. So Jiva is defined. It has got a very clear definition of Raga Dvesha, and this Raga Dvesha pushing you into the cycle of samsara. It travels from one loka to the other loka. It changes the bodies like a cloth, like Bhagavad Gita talks about. So obviously what you're telling is right. But because the definition of Jiva is given like that, Shankaracharya says that a Chidabhasa is a requirement for this Jiva, because the original consciousness cannot have all this.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Very subtle aspects, but even if you are not getting it, not a big problem right now, but you must try and mull over these aspects. Otherwise, that particular thing always comes up. If Chidabhasa is there, and we are not the first ones who are discussing this. If you go into our Shastras, every Purva Paksha will ask the same thing, same Advaitins only. One master in Advaita has got a different take, other have a different take. But ultimately what Shankaracharya says is it doesn't matter. Why? Because whether I take this or that, really speaking, I say that all this is negated. Even if I take Sakshi Chaitanyam is sufficient for me to explain everything of Jiva, for example. Still that Sakshi Chaitanyam of the individuality, you are limiting that particular thing is called Paricheda. In Sanskrit is called Paricheda. And this Paricheda still requires a upadhi of your mind and body. It still requires. For the individual to come and individual to work as Jiva, you still have to negate it. Doesn't matter whether you take it as reflected consciousness or this consciousness. But what I am telling is that majority of the Advaitins only accept Chidabhasa, because that only actually can explain all the aspects of Jiva, of Sukha Dukkha, Ragadvesha, and the transmigration which makes it a Jiva. This is a general conclusion of Sureshwaracharya. So I don't have any better person than Sureshwaracharya to describe these things in terms of Chidabhasa. Yeah. And if really speaking, if you go to Shankaracharya, he doesn't even care. He says, anyway, I'm going to discount all this as Mithya. They're only Namarupa. It really doesn't matter to me. That is how
So,
he
Shankarji, so when someone,
both the version.
Shankarji, so when someone is realized it's the reflected consciousness disappears?
It doesn't disappear. Like, for example, you got the
It's
knowledge.
reflected. It's a reflected consciousness we're talking about. So it's not real. It's a reflection of something.
Like, let me complete. You, right from childhood, experience the sunrise and sunset. And somebody, you learnt in the science that the sun doesn't really rises, sun doesn't really sets. You got the knowledge of it now. Now, I know very well that sun is not rising and setting, but different aspect is creating that illusion in my mind. Yeah. But whether the illusion will go away, you can still enjoy your sunrise and sunset, especially when you go to a ocean end. People spend a lot of time to go there at a specific time to enjoy these things. And you can do that. But hopefully every one of them knows that they are not real. There's only illusion that is getting created. Similarly, when you say subconscious is there, or a reflected consciousness is there and a thought is there, what we are telling is there is a reflection which is making the thought appear to get that phala vyapti, but experientially they appear to be one and the same. That is why we say that all this that we are talking about in terms of jnana is nothing but a perception in my mind as to what is the reality associated. Experientially, Chidabhasa will appear, your mind, your thought will appear to be sentient. And that thought, even when we talk about Jivatma, what is Jiva? Is nothing but a thought. The original I thought that I'm getting in my mind is the ego. That also is a thought, and that also is illumined by the consciousness, and that also is sustained by reflected consciousness, is what ShankarJi says.
Yeah, so it actually, I'm reminded of what Gina Ji was saying in our camp there, that even Jivan Mukta, even if people are Jivan Mukta or realized, they are able to hold on to the thought of, whatever is going through their minds, or they observe people, things, etc. But they are still able to connect with, the Supreme Consciousness. Whereas because of the impurities of our mind, we have momentarily some experiential, we experience things momentarily, but we can't hold on to it. So I can understand that the Chidabhasa will not go away, but they're able to transcend that when they become Jivan Mukta. It doesn't go away because that is just
a cognition. It's only a cognition, Tanaji.
Yeah.
Cognitively, you are fully aware that although it appears to be one and the same, that Chidabhasa is not really the true one. There is a bhasa which is actually the self. That is the Atman that we talk about. Question 3 is saying that reflected consciousness, which in this text we are referring to as prana. Again, I come back to question 3, that prana is born out of the Atma, and that prana, please don't take it as same as Atma, like a child coming out of the mother, both having same status of reality. It is just like a shadow for a man. Very clearly, Rishi Pippalada has told us that. Yeah. Okay. Like I mentioned, this particular aspect till Manomaya Kosha, we are able to do with something called Karya Karana Vichara. I think I mentioned this very clearly in the last time. Karya Karana Vichara, Karya is the cause, and Karana is the cause, Karya is the effect. So there is a cause and there is an effect. Like a person asked as to where from prana is born, then automatically he has to say that it came out of the Atman. But then he says, no, don't think it has come out of Atman like that. It is just like a shadow coming out of the man. So this is where we said it is reflective of a concept of Vivartavada. I hope you have noted this particular term of Vivartavada. Vivartavada is the one which actually says that particular snake which came out of the rope doesn't have the equal status, or a dream that is coming out of the waker doesn't have the same status. So you may have earned $1 million in your dream, but when it comes to your waking state, that $1 million has no particular value in your waking world, because they are of two different aspects, orders of reality, as we talk about. Yeah? So all this, like a shadow and a man, have got two orders of reality. When proper conditions are not there, man will remain, but shadow disappears. Like that. They are not of the same aspects. So whenever we talk about till Manomaya Kosha, Karya Karana Vichara will hold. You can explain many things and you say that this is of illusive nature, not of the same, etc., etc. But you will find this Karya Karana Vichara till your Manomaya Kosha. But the moment you come to your Vijnanamaya Kosha, where we said only thing that will work is Drik Drishya Vivek. You definitely require to bring in an observer. And Advaita Vedanta, like the Paramacharya of Shankaracharya, Gaudapadacharya, wrote Mandukya Karika, for example, he brings in this particular aspect. We will read the question 4, the first question which has come. We have 5 minutes, and then we will continue later. So the main idea is you need to bring in the observer into your aspect. Drik should come into your analysis. Unless an observer comes into picture, you will not really understand the true nature of this, world, true nature of this creation. In fact, even the physics, the sciences accept that. Now, if you go into the subtle aspects of physics, very clear. If the electron is seen, it appears to act as a particle. If the electron is not seen, and the experiments, when they are designed, if you say that the experiment is designed in such a way where no observer is possible, whether in the past or in the present or in the future, it is not possible at all. If such a experiment is designed, the electron behaves like a wave. You can measure how electron is behaving very clearly. Even physics accepts that observer has got a very important role to play in order to understand this particular world that we have around us. So it appears that somehow our rishis got that particular aspect, and they brought in this drishya vivek. Whenever we have a subtler aspects of intellect and above to manage, then karya karana vichara or sadhya sadhana vichara, these things will not help you. You definitely require to bring in an observer, experiencer. That is the one which will give you more clarity with respect to the creation which is down, including your manomaya kosha, pranamaya kosha, and vijnanamaya kosha. We'll read the first and you will understand why I'm telling. Manojji.
Shankarji, on that basis, if you are bringing Greek into the analysis or the understanding, so with Greek, your story would be different than without Greek. And might be both stories are true, isn't it? Both
Which both stories we are talking about?
So just like in the physics one electron you put that, we know those double slit experiment, but
Correct.
Here what we can see, if you're bringing Greek, we can see Atman in a different way. If you not bring that, Atman is perceived in a different way. So bringing that is changing everything.
Correct. Correct.
So who will decide which is the correct way of representation?
Both are correct way of representation. What I'm telling is depends upon the person at what level of understanding a person is with respect to this. If a person is totally believing I am body, for him Drisya Viveka will not help. For him, you require to bring in a cause and effect. I'm seeing this, what is the reason? You have to tell him the cause, that this is the cause you are experiencing this, but at the same time, you require to say that experientially you may be thinking about this, but it is different. And that is where all the examples will be given in terms of sunrise, sunset, etc., etc. Say that experientially you may be thinking like this, but Shastra is the pramana, and that Shastra is telling you that this particular thing is there, and it is not against the logic. That is how the teaching will be given to a person who is operating at a Annamaya Kosha. What I'm telling is at Annamaya it will work, at Pranamaya it will work, at Manomaya to partly it will work, but the moment you talk about Vijnanamaya Kosha, the Drik aspect, unless you bring it into picture as a seer, as an experiencer, it is not possible. And believe me, I will not stop at Vijnanamaya Kosha with this. The moment I introduce Drik Drishya Viveka, the prana becomes a drik for my body. Mind becomes drik for my prana. And intellect will become drik for my mind. So the concept is applied through and through, but I require to overcome my initial aspects of Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, and Manomaya Kosha before a teacher introduces a seer, an experiencer. So you will find that in this particular verse, the student will start asking that question as to who is experiencing and what is the substratum for such an experiencer. So the Drik aspect is introduced with the question 4, which is telling me that we are now entering into the aspect of Vijnanamaya. I hope I'm able to tell Manoj. Yeah.
Yes.
Atahainam
Atahayam
Suryayani Gargyaha
Suryayani
Prapacha
Prapacha
Bhagavan
Bhagavan
netasmin
netasmin
purushe kani
purushe kani
swapanti
swapanti
kanya asmin
Kanyasmin
jagrati
Jagrati
katara esha devah
katara
Isha Deva
swapnan pashyati
swapna pashyati
kasyaitat
Kashyata
sukham bhavati
sukham bhavati
kasminnu
Kasmino
sarve
Sarve
sampratisthita
Sampratishtita
bhavantiti.
bhavanti.
So now a student who is called as Gargya Sauryayini. Sauryayini indicates he is the grandson of Surya. Grandson of Surya. Maybe Surya is a not necessarily our son, but there is somebody named Surya. Like we have Surya Prakash and others, Surya. Maybe it is like that. We don't know. Grandson of Surya, and he is Gargya. Yeah. Gargya, there is a whole lot of rishis who come from this Gargya Vamsham. They are there. Gargi is a very famous Rishika, which is there in many Upanishads. She has given a lot of knowledge when it comes to that in terms of this. So Gargya Vamsa is very, very famous in terms of this one. And so Sauryayani. Sauryayani, we have already seen in the question 1. If you see, Surya is representative of Prana. Then we talked about Dakshinayana and Uttarayana. Surya is representative of that particular path where a student is led to the Surya Loka and there is no return for such a person, for example. Okay? And those people who are Chandra Loka, for example, Dakshina path, if they take, then they are part and parcel of this samsara, of going to Chandra Loka, spending your punya there, enjoying, and then coming back. You may name it as Swarga, Naraka, doesn't matter, but you will go. Enjoy doesn't mean only real enjoyment. Even if they are going through a Naraka experience, that is enjoying that, like that. Yeah. So that is how we have seen how the aspects of Surya or Surya representing the Jnana and representing that particular aspect of where a student goes and he never returns. Yeah, a path of no return, not in samsara anymore, kind of. So this Suryayana is a kind of indication that he has already overcome that limitations of that prana that we are talking about, Manomaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, all that is over. A person who has already started thinking in terms of this, those aspects that we are looking at is Suryayani Gargya. We have seen that. Yeah. He asked a question. He says that, O Bhagavan, which are they, the organs that sleep in a man? So now the question of analysis of the dream and deep sleep you will see as to who is the experiencer of these conditions. When you say, so something is sleeping, we all know, when I say I am sleeping, what organs are sleeping? What organs are alive, awake? He's asking that particular question, which again are awake in him. And which is the Devata? What is that particular organ? Devata always represented that conscious entity that we are talking about. Who is that entity who is seeing this dream? When we talk about Kanyasmin Jagrati, Katara Esha Devaha Swapnan Pashyati. Who is seeing this dream? When you say I am sleeping, then I am not there. Who is seeing this dream? When you say that somebody is seeing the dream. And also, whose is this happiness? Happiness goes to Anandamaya Kosha. When you say in Anandamaya Kosha, I'm enjoying the peace that is there, who is enjoying? Because I'm not there. My mind is not there. My body is not there. Who is actually enjoying the Sushupti Avastha, and of which do all these indeed depend? What is the substratum? Who is the substratum for all these experiences, all these? Now he is clearly seeing there are three different people. One who is enjoying the wakeful state, one who is enjoying the dream state, one who is enjoying the joy in the deep sleep state. What is the substratum for all these particular aspects? Who is that who is supporting all this? So the drik, the experiencer, the seer is brought in by this particular student in terms of going ahead with this. Okay, we'll stop here and take up this if the classes continue, or take up whenever we start the class. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.
So you guys want to discuss whether we should stop now or
What?
the class, this class, because next week is the final day for the Bal Vihar. Parents will be coming here. What we'd like to do.
I think then better will be online classes.
We can
Because
continue.
If we stop during summer months, don't we?
But we do stop July and August
Yeah,
because it is too short summer and we keep going out or people keep coming.
I know.
There will be distraction. There.
So you guys want to call it quits
I-
until September?
No, we will do after next week's of the children till end of June. We'll do 2 more classes. We'll do
Oh, that is
on the
good.
Zoom
Yeah.
if possible, and then July, August,
Or we can come here for 2 weeks.
whichever is convenient.
Yeah.
It doesn't
That
matter.
is okay, we can manage.
I don't mind coming here because
For 2 weeks, I wouldn't mind coming.
Yeah.
Right, Ava?
would you be able to come?
So kids are done actually.
Yeah.
Today is the last
Yeah.
day.
That's what I'm saying.
I need to attend them, means I need to take care of them.
It's called conflict of interest.
You can join online as well.
Yeah, I can join online, yeah.
So you will have the link anyway. I will post it this time.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. So if in case you cannot come here for some reason, you can join. Hopefully. Yeah.
Thank you.
So we'll come here generally.
So 18th and 25th we will have class, and after
Yes.
that we'll have a break for 2 months.
Yes.
Great. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Shankarji.
All right. Hari Om.
Hurry on.
You said that is experience.
Yeah.
But he said rhythm is again that thought.
Yes, that is breathe.
Oh, breath.
Online
Not
is
breath.
breathe. Breathe.
Okay, drik is experience.
Yeah, seer, yeah.
Like a sakshi.
Yes.
And the other one is, I'm confused about the.
Breathe,
Oh, brick.
breathe.
Oh,
Breathium means.
Vritti.
yeah.
I thought it's vritti.
Even.
Yeah, breathing, yeah.
Oh, vrit, like me.
Yeah.
That's
Sorry,
what
what
I
is the question there?
not brit. No, little bit confusion about the letter sound, whether it is br or vr,
Or the
yeah.
drink and breathe.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
tongue
this we are
twister.
talking about Drik Drishya Viveka that we talked about, or?
Yeah, Drak, I got clarification from him that is experiencer like Sakshi and things like that.
Drik
But other one-
Drishya. Drishya is seeing.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it is DRK, Drik.
Okay,
D
that's
for,
the original
D
root
for
word.
Delhi.
Okay, got it.
Delhi, Rourkela, Calcutta. So
But other one is Vritta.
Drik Drishya.
No, I got it.
Drishya.
I got that.
Okay.
But before that, we said that fal something, fal vritti or something. You said
Vritti Vyapti and Phala Vyapti.
fal vyapti and vritti vyapti. That vritti vyapti is thought, right?
Correct. Vritti is
Okay.
thought.
And that's with verse sound, not verse sound.
Wow.
Verse sound, like Victor. Okay.
Varanasi.
That is what I was not clear. Thank you.
Varanasi. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
All right. Hari Om.
wow.